Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Belgium once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So the beer that we're looking at today is a style that I very much enjoy, but it does feel like I've not had anything in this particular style bracket in a little while. So curious to see what this one has in store for us, especially so because this brewery are a little bit unique in the way that they do things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, of course. But for this review then, we are going to go to Roeselare, which is in the southwestern part of Belgium, in the Vlaanderen region, the Dutch-speaking region, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from BOMBrewery, who released their beers under the name Triporteur, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But this particular beer is called the Full Moon 12. It comes in at 10.2% ABV, and this one is a quadruple. So yeah, this I think could turn out to be really quite interesting. So the quadruple as a style was originally developed by Brouwerij de Koningshoven, La Trappe, up in the Netherlands. So one of my viewers actually corrected me on this, quite rightly so, that the quadruple is actually a Dutch style of beer. It's not a Belgian style of beer, as many people often say, and I've made this mistake in videos gone by. You know, you talk about Belgian Trappist beers and things like that, but no, the quadruple is actually a Dutch style by origin, although we often talk about, you know, Belgian Abbey beers and things like this. So I guess it's probably right to call this one an Abbey quadruple actually. But like we said, 10.2% ABV, and I think this one should be quite interesting. So in this video as well, a massive shout out and thank you to Davor Širic, who is my Slovenian beer mule. You might have seen over the years that he's organised me many different Slovenian beer boxes, but he always puts in a few Belgian beers as well. He's a massive fan of these Belgian things. He's got a very ridiculous cellar actually. You should see the list of this thing that he has on Untappd. It's just absolutely insane. I keep trying to encourage him to start his own channel and share his thoughts on these beers with the world, but he's a bit resistant to that idea, unfortunately. But he always gives me a couple of Belgian beers in each Slovenian box that he sends me. So a big thank you to Davor once again for making this review possible, and this must be quite an interesting one if he wants me to do a review of it, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I could do in the future from BOMBrewery. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about BOMBrewery then, on to my brewery notes. So, as I've mentioned to you already, BOMBrewery are based in Roeselare in Vlaanderen, in the southwestern part of Belgium, and the company was founded by Bert van Hecke. So he originally studied engineering with specialisations in chemical and biochemical engineering, and also fermentation science as well, and he's been involved with Brouwerij Martens in Bocholt since 2006, and he's got an extensive array of experience that he's built up over the years. He's about 40. I think he's in his early 40s actually, but you know, he's helped these guys establish operations in Galate, Romania, also in Suzhou in China, and he also helped the Celis Brewery in Austin, Texas, and the Hey Joe Brewery in Franschhoek in South Africa establish themselves as well. So the guy behind this brewery has an extensive array of experience. But if we take a little step back from some of these things though, in 2012 he established his own brewing brand, which is BOMBrewery. Now BOMBrewery, B-O-M, brewery, if you like, stands for Belgian Original Malt Bakery and Brewery. But Bert had always been interested in producing his own malts, and he bought a coffee roaster and converted this to roast malt. And apparently he was inspired by the method used by Rodenbach for producing their malt, which is kind of interesting if you want to go and read about it. But basically what he does is he gets these malted grains, he creates an individual recipe for each beer that he wants to brew, and then the malt that he produces is used within the brewing process, is used within 48 hours in the brewing process to make these new beers. But over the last years, they've continued to develop new recipes, new malt varieties as well, and increase their brewing capacity. But in 2018, they moved into their current base that they have and opened a tasting room and shop in it as well. And you'll find this place in Rumbeke, which is in the kind of southeastern part of Roeselare. I don't know if you would say Rumbeke or Rumbeek, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, in 2019, Bert also established the B-Brew company, which manufactures and installs brewery equipment, and they also provide consultation services for breweries as well, you know, that are getting started up and things. So yeah, quite an interesting company, and obviously Bert has a hell of a lot of experience behind him with this as well. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 18 different kinds of beer, and they seem to be, you know, quite there's quite a lot of Belgian styles in there, of course, the classic Belgian styles, but there are a few other things in there that I would be interested to try as well. They've got a German Helles and things like that, so hopefully we can try a few more beers from this brewery at some point in the future. But yeah, Davor knows that I like a quadruple, and I'm pretty sure that's why he would have sent me this one. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about BOMBrewery for the moment, and the Triporteur range of beers that they do. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get cracking with this one then and see how we go. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty special actually. I do like the artwork on this. It's quite nice, a little bit retro, kind of cartoony if you like. But this beer itself, like we said, this one is a 10.2% quadruple. Apparently it uses oak from a barrel cut up by the brewery themselves using a chainsaw, and that's why you've got this little devil guy with a chainsaw on there as well, which is kind of cool. But yeah, plain black bottle cap on this one, of course, 330 millilitres, and it says that this one is best before the 25th of July 2023. I'm not sure how old this beer is, but I'm guessing it might have had you know, a 5-year mark on it, and I'm sure Davor said to me that he was in Belgium in about 2018, so that would make sense. I think this beer might be a 2018 vintage one. But there you can see on the side of the bottle there what I was talking about: Belgian Original Malt Bakery and BOMBrewery. So you can see that there. That is pretty cool actually. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious. Yeah, it's going to behave itself, that's no problem. You always have to be careful with some of these Belgian beers in case they explode. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So you always, you know, you should always pour these beers with care, because remember, with Belgian beers, they are very yeast orientated, but they also pretty much all undergo secondary fermentation in the bottle. So they add a little bit of sugar into them to and they evolve over time basically. So yeah, this one has behaved itself quite well though, and there's only a tiny little bit of sediment on the bottom of this, which is quite impressive when you consider how old the beer is. So let me just line that up again for you. But yeah, this looks pretty nice. One of the darker quadruples I've come across actually in recent times. But anyway, before the head disappears on this beer, so you can see that the head on this beer is poured to be about two-thirds of a finger. I would describe it as being a nice kind of fawn colour, and it's actually very, very foamy. That's one of the cleanest heads I've had on one of these sort of Abbey beers in quite a little while, in fact. But yeah, the colour of this beer is a lovely dark sort of mahogany, rosewoody colour. So I really like how this one goes together. But yeah, this, as I say, this strikes me as being one of the darker quadruples I've come across in recent times, in fact. So I've described this one as being, yeah, a lovely dark, you know, very dark chestnut, sort of rosewoody type colour. I think that's a fair description of this one. But yeah, one or two bigger bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice, I have to say. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour of your beer. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any adjuncts that you put in and any barrel aging that you do is also going to play a role in this as well. And when we've got oak chips in this beer, I guess you can probably compare this beer to ones that do have oak chips, because it's not the same as barrel aging. You know, this one, that will also affect the colour of the beer very, very slightly, I would think. You know, when this one is a more kind of brown sugary orientated beer rather than being a big imperial stout or something. But yeah, if you shine the light through this, it does give you a kind of slightly, you know, a dark sort of chestnutty colour. So yeah, the way everything goes together in this one, I think, is pretty nice. So yeah, one of the darker quadruples I've come across, but you know, that's just from recent memory. I've reviewed quite a few quadruples on the channel now, so there may well have been ones that are darker than this. But yeah, certainly not out with the realms of possibility to have one that is this colour. So let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. So yeah, let's go for it. Curious about this beer. Ooh, this does smell really nice. Yeah, so the thing you also have to remember with these beers is they add a little bit of, as I say, they add a bit of brew sugar into them at the end for the bottle fermentation. So the thing is with these Belgian beers, one of the reasons why they've got, you know, considerably lighter mouthfeels than say the imperial stouts and things like this that you get from the American style craft breweries is because a lot of the alcohol content in them comes from that secondary fermentation and simply adding brew sugar into the beer rather than extracting it from the malt. But yeah, the aroma of this one is absolutely lovely. Now, I will say this is quite interesting because it does come across in the aroma as having that sort of barrel-aged element to it. Now, as I said, for me, I've had quite a few beers where they've put oak chips and things in them, and usually it just, when you have that, it makes the beer like a little bit drier, if you like, and emphasises, you know, kind of woody flavour, whereas if you do proper barrel aging, it smoothens the whole beer out and makes it, you know, come across as very infused. This one actually is somewhat in between. So that's really interesting. You know, the oak that they've used in this one comes from the barrel itself. So yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer for sure. This one, in the aroma, at least for me, it does come across as really nice and sort of barrel aged in a sense, but it does have a bit of that slightly drier woody quality that you would expect of the you know, it does have a bit of that drier woody quality that you would expect of the you know, oak chip beers. But yeah, anyway, that's a side point. So what you get out of this beer straight away though, you can smell that nice kind of oaky base to it, and like I say, you get a little bit of, you get a bit of the kind of smoother, almost kind of like bourbon barrel sort of thing. It does smell like it's bourbon barrel, or it could be rum, because it's got a wee bit of the sweetness of rum that you'd expect. There's quite a bit of vanilla to this, and that makes me want to say maybe it's a rum barrel. But anyway, whatever it is, you can smell that lovely smooth oaky character in there. You do get a bit of more dry quality out of the oak at the back of the nose, right enough. So dry, slightly drier oaky character, nice kind of smooth, you know, a little bit of a drier oaky character, a bit of a more kind of smooth, as we say, there's a little bit of a more kind of smooth, how would you say, a little bit of a smoother kind of, you know, sort of spirit, like a sort of brown sugary, spirity sort of thing. You can smell that, a bit of that mixing in with the oak as well. You've got a lovely little bit of vanilla in there. But yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer actually. So yeah, the smoothness in this one I think is very, very nice. But yeah, nice woody backbone to this one, lovely smoothness to it. But yeah, I like how this beer goes about its business in that sense for sure. But on the on top of that, of course, you get these lovely big kind of brown sugary elements to it. You can smell all that, but I do get a bit of breadiness in this beer, so you can smell a bit of a kind of thicker, you know, brown wholemealy kind of bready sort of thing. And this is common for the Belgian, the quadruple style, of course. Made the mistake again, the quadruple style. You can smell that lovely kind of thick brown bready element in there, but you get a few bread crusty notes out of it. There are one or two little nutty kind of undertones in there, and then on top of that, it's all about the brown sugar. So you can smell a little bit of a kind of concentrated, slightly treacly sort of thing in this one. I'm not sure exactly how long the length of the wort boil on this this particular beer would be, but you know, the longer you boil the wort, the more you're going to get these kind of slightly leathery, kind of big treacly notes out of the beer. You get a little bit of that right in the middle of the nose. You can smell a slightly sweeter caramel outside of it. Then you get the more kind of honey notes and a little bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to it as well. So you've got a kind of vast array of different brown sugary notes coming out of this beer. So yeah, but you have everything you'd expect of this. You've got a nice smooth woody backbone, which is probably a bit more unique to either a barrel aged quadruple or whatever, or this particular beer. But then you've got the big kind of brown bready yeasty component to the beer, then a vast array of different brown sugars to this one, which I very much like. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things with this beer then, I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side as much as we need to, but on the hoppy side of things, you've got a little bit, you do have a lovely little bit of a, as we say, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness in the back corner of the palate here. I do wonder with this beer exactly what hops they would have used. Could it be a little bit of Northern Brewer from Germany, which is quite popular? In Doppelbock, of course, you could use, you know, a little bit of Williamette or a wee bit of, you know, Eureka or something like this from the States. And I'm thinking what else there are. Bramley's Crofts from England might be another one. These are the hops, of course, that give you the kind of red fruity notes. Barbe Rouge from France would be another interesting one. But yeah, with this beer, you get a little bit of smooth earthiness out of it on the hops. You do get a little bit of floral aromaticity and a wee bit of grassiness. Remember though, I suspect this beer is maybe about 3 or 4 years old, so a lot of that green component will have dropped out of the beer compared with when it was fresh, but you still get a bit of that kind of green, smooth green component out of this one. So a little bit earthy, a little bit herbal, wee remnants of a kind of floral character and some smooth grassiness in there, and then it's all about the fruity side of things. So I certainly get a wee bit of an almost kind of cakey note out of this one. You do get a little bit of that kind of Christmas puddingy cakey sort of thing, although this beer does lean more towards the bread, definitely. But on the fruity side of things, a little bit of a sharper raisin. I do get some nice kind of plummy notes to it, a little bit of a more kind of dried pruny element also, but yes, some, you know, typical figgy notes, a little bit of blackcurrant, and a wee bit of a more sort of oily blackberry type note out of this beer. So I really like how that goes together in this one. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in this particular regard. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma, but definitely take a wee bit of time and just ponder over the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. I think this is going to be a really interesting one. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So this one is the Triporteur Full Moon 12, if I've given it its right name. I had an awful feeling that I hadn't yet. But yeah, the Triporteur Full Moon 12, 10.2% Quadrupel from BOMBrewery in Roeselare in Vlaanderen in the south of Belgium. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skull, and cheers. Yeah, that is pretty nice actually. That is pretty nice and very, very smooth in fact. Yeah, I'm just going to say solid beer straight up with this one. Yeah, this is one of the smoothest quadruples I think that I've come across since I've been doing the channel. This one's just got a lovely kind of balance to it actually. So, you know, this one I think you will enjoy if you're a fan of this style, of course. But yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me. So, where do we start with this one then? The base of this beer, it's got a lovely kind of smooth woody character to it, as we've kind of said in the aroma. This one actually, what you would expect from the aroma of this beer translates or transpires very much in the actual flavour. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make about this one as well. But yeah, this is a pretty damn solid quadruple. You can certainly say that. But yeah, so let's break this down for you then. Straight away across that middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate, you can feel that smooth, oaky, woody sort of thing in there. And like I say, this one kind of sits halfway between the barrel-aged vibe and the sort of oak chippy vibe, if that makes sense. So you can get, you know, you do get a wee bit of the sort of smoothness and infused kind of character that you would expect of a proper barrel-aged one. But at the same time, as you move towards the back half of the middle third of your palate and into that back third of the palate, you can feel the slightly more dry elements of the wood coming out there. And for me, that's more reminiscent of what you would get when you add oak chips into the beer. But anyway, as we say, you've got that lovely smooth oaky character to it. If you go to the front half of the middle third of your palate, there's you can feel that there are a few sort of nutty elements sitting underneath there, and you get a wee bit of a more kind of vanilla sweetness on the front half of that middle third of your palate. Absolutely. So yeah, the base of that on the front half of that middle third of your palate, it is nice. The vanilla, I think you just get a little bit. The vanilla just kind of builds up in this one, which is great. But yeah, sitting on top of that, on top of these notes, you do get a little bit more of a kind of big bready note in there. You get a big kind of brown bready character to this one, and it's not too thick actually. It is just quite nice. So it's kind of middle. It's got a little bit of fluffiness to it almost, but yeah, quite a dense wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's rye bread like, but it's certainly quite a dense kind of wholemeal brown bready note that sits there. And if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty note to it, but we'll come back to that later. But that bready layer that you've got, it's almost got like a little kind of crater in it, or like a and then in the middle of that you've got all those kind of brown sugary elements in there, so you can feel that right in the dead centre, of your palate, you've got that, you know, slightly more concentrated, almost treacly type thing. As you move out from under that, you get a little bit more of a you get a wee bit more of a kind of oily caramelly note there, and as you push out from that, you get a wee bit of a slightly more toasted brown sugar and kind of honey note, and then at the very edge of the that middle third of your palate, you're starting to get more of a kind of biscuity McVitie's digestive sort of thing. So there's a whole spectrum of brown sugars in this one, and it's almost like they just sit in like a bowl of, like, you know, wholemeal brown bread, and that sits on top of this kind of woody base that the beer has. And then obviously the woody character has a little bit of vanilla. It has a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of nuttiness kind of thrown into it. So yeah, I do like how everything pieces together in this beer actually. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, I think that goes together very nicely. In fact, that's the middle third of your palate covered quite extensively in this one. So let's look at the back third of the palate then. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a bready build up in there. So you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. You can feel there's a wee bit more of a bread crusty note, and the base of that back third of your palate is the same. You know, you've got the woody notes in there, and you've got that thicker, kind of more dense wholemeal brown bread, and then on top of that you can feel a more kind of airy, yeasty, lighter brown bready sort of thing, and that's the yeasty characters coming out of the beer. So when you start at the back of your palate in this one, you can feel the flavour is taller, it condenses down as you come further forward, then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it just squashes down a little bit. And then the flavours are a bit more kind of dense and compressed together actually. But I think that is everything that we really need to say about the sort of yeasty and malty side of this beer. In fact, it's done really nicely, and it is very, very kind of smooth, in fact. So yeah, I do like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. Having to keep an eye on this computer at the moment, just because it's rendering videos and things for me. This is the thing with this GoPro, you've got to edit videos together at the moment, unfortunately, which is one of the things. I don't like the software for these. I don't like the software that this GoPro uses. It's annoying. But yeah, anyway, on to the hoppy side of things with this beer then. So back corner of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of an earthiness in the corners of the palate there. Like I say, I'm not sure exactly what hops they would use in this one, but it's got a little bit of a smooth earthiness to it. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a little bit of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing, which I very much like. So you do get a wee bit of that in it, and like I say, this beer is about 3 years old, maybe 4 years old, I think. So a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it in comparison to what it would have been in times gone by. But yeah, I think it goes about its business quite nicely regardless. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of grassiness there, and you do actually get a wee tiny touch of zestiness coming out of the beer too, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I think this beer goes about its business very, very nicely, in fact. So yeah, on that note, I think it is, it does go together very nicely. Yeah, hoppy green component of this one just adds a little bit more depth to the beer, I would say. But let's focus on the fruity part of the beer then, the front third of your palate. So, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there, a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that kind of front third of your palate is a more kind of smooth, brown bready sort of thing. You do get one or two of the woody elements sitting in there as well. But on top of that, of course, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So for me, what would we say about the fruity side of this beer? It's quite oily for sure. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there's too much of a raisiny sharpness to this quadruple actually. I mean, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, on that border region you will get a little bit of an almost kind of cakey vibe out of it. But on there, you get a bit of a kind of, there's a bit of a more kind of, as we would say, you get a little bit of that kind of dried pruny element there as you move further forward. Yeah, as you move further forward onto the edge of the palate, you get a little bit of a kind of dried pruny note to it. As you come forward, it's a little bit more kind of figgy and things. It's quite a dried fruity character you get out of this one, in fact. And as you push into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of black curranty, if you like. There is a wee bit of an oily blackberry note to this one, but I do find the fruity character in this beer to be quite a dried fruit sort of note in there. So yeah, wee bit of a, so you know, as I say, a little bit of a kind of pruny note, a little bit of sultana in there, some figgy notes underneath, a black currant. You do get a little bit of a black currant base and a more oily blackberry kind of sitting on top of it. So it's an interesting composition, this beer. I really like how it goes about its business in that regard. So yeah, the way it goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, the fruity component of this beer, I think, works really well in this one. But like I say, this beer, mouthfeel wise, I think this is where we should move on to the mouthfeel, because that's what really distinguishes this one for me. This one is definitely a very, it's one of the smoothest quadruples I think that I've come across actually. It's got quite a sort of leathery kind of vibe to it, if that makes sense. But you've got a smooth woodiness and a big leathery character to this one, which I find quite interesting. But overall, I would say the beer is definitely full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one, absolutely. It's just got that, and I say it's got that big silky, leathery, smooth, woody kind of character to it, which I like. And there's a bit of an oily vibe to this one too. So there's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on in this beer, that's for sure. So on the on the malty and barrel aging side of this beer, if we can say that, it's very, very smooth, as we've said. There's a wee bit of dryness in there. You get a wee bit of sweetness out of it as well. You've got a big smoothness from the bready character in this beer too, but you've also got a degree of sweetness and toastiness in there also, which I very much enjoy. But on the kind of hoppy side of things, I think it's quite a low IBU beer. I mean, you wouldn't expect a quadruple to be a high IBU beer, no way. But yeah, this beer has a sort of, I think it's maybe about 15-20 IBU, something like that. Low IBU count on this beer, which is to be expected. But then on the fruity side of things, it's got a nice little bit of dryness to it, a little bit of an oiliness as well. I mean, I really like how that goes together in this one. The fruity character in this one is quite a dried fruity note, but it's got everything you would want from the style. But like I say, this is definitely one of the kind of smoother, sort of silkier and slightly leathery examples I've come across in the style. So yeah, it does give you something a bit different compared to what we've had from other examples in the past. So yeah, a big thank you to Davor once again for making this review possible. This has certainly been an interesting review, and it shows you a different side to the style, of course, and this is a style that I enjoy very, very much. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Full Moon 12 a 10.2% quadruple beer from the Triporteur range at BOMBrewery in Roeselare in Vlaanderen in Belgium. I think really interesting stuff. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from BOMBrewery as well, and the Triporteur range, and we will see about returning to these guys at some point in the near future. But yeah, until the next time, Slàinte, skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Thank you again to Davor for making this review possible. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and catch you guys very soon.